You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Adler and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 501, our breakdown of the season finale of The Mandalorian Season 3, an episode called The Return. And it was an episode that, I guess, subverted most of our worst fears and anxieties, I would say. And some people that are very close to the show who may be on have slept better since this this aired. But one of the people that's with us tonight is the man of speculation and theory. Jonesy is with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Axwell, man, hero of Mandalore.
No, not yet.
Who'd have thought?
Not yet. No, I gotta cut him a break. I've got questions about that whole thing too, because now I'm starting to think, were they just talking about like the spies in general, like as a general term and not anyone specifically?
Yeah, I think they duped you.
Yes.
Okay, and also with us tonight,
We're not starting that early.
I already got the first one out. With us tonight is Lauren. Lauren, welcome to the show. How are you feeling now that you've gotten past the final episode here?
I'm feeling fantastic, relieved. I'm gonna sleep so much better tonight now that I know that nothing bad happened to Din.
I think tonight when you fall asleep, there's going to be a little black, a little circle that goes around your bed, and then it's going to zoom in right on you as you pass out for the night. That's exactly how you're going to go.
That's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to show me finally at peace. At
peace. Yep. Happy endings all around. So yeah, we'll get into all this. Of course, we've got some opening thoughts. We'll get into the breakdown and then speculate on some of the things that were still unanswered or things that we anticipate may go into a season 4, potentially other series that are going to be adjacent to this or I don't know, connected to this in some way. There's a lot of questions here around all that stuff. But before we do, let's see, what do we got for news, Jonesy? What's going on here? Well, not news, but the business stuff.
On the business side. Yeah, so the business side, we got this Sunday, we're going to go ahead and start launching our new programming. So you have to keep me honest. What do we say we're doing? Because I've already forgotten here. So Sunday. Yeah, so Sunday night, we're doing a public live stream of the Way Station, which is our new news and rumor show. So we'll come on, we'll do that show. It's about a 30-minute episode, 60 minutes, whatever much time we take to get through some of that. And then after that, we'll actually go and do a private recording that is for Patreon only that will be uploaded that next day as well. Yeah.
And that Patreon one is going to be a spotlight show. There's plenty of things. We've not had a chance to kind of sit down and discuss it. We were going to wait to see how this episode panned out. And honestly, there's just trying to get ready for this one has really taken all of our time. So I would say by tomorrow, at the very latest, maybe Friday, we'll have that in the books. I think right now it looks like we may be leaning into kind of maybe a show recap or season recap exclusive to Patreons. Generally, those are public shows, but there's plenty of things in here that we can speculate on. And maybe that may be it. Maybe it's speculation on the, where does this series go into season 4 and beyond. But stay tuned for that. We'll have that here out and scheduled very shortly. Hey, where can they go to find all these, by the way?
They can go to cantinacast.com/Patreon for all of the Patreon content. Again, welcome back, or not welcome back to Jack, or Jack, upgrade. Man, words tonight. I'm so excited to talk about the show. I cannot talk about anything else, apparently. Cantinacast.com/Patreon, cantinacast.com/YouTube if you want to check out the live stream, Sundays and Thursdays, of course. 9 p.m. Central, that time is not changing. So that is still consistent. On the Patreon front, again, thanks to Jack for doing the upgrade up to the After Dark tier, or at least what is currently the After Dark tier. I have to relearn what all the tiers are, is what we're going to name those. But a huge thanks to the now part of the tribe members. That's not changing. Mike, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Steve. And of course, Rod, our Delusions of Grandeur tier member as well. So thank you all for all of your support on Patreon. Cantinacast.com/Patreon.
Okay, I can't hold back anymore. I want to talk just quickly about the new tier names. Okay, so
get it off your chest.
Got to get it off my chest. So the $1 tier name now is going to be called I Care. To quote Luke Skywalker from Empire Strikes Back. I care. which is appropriate. And then the $2 now is We Are All the Republic. You'll see the theme here, right? These are all chants or things that people have said in the movies or books, as the case may be for this one. Then it's This Is the Way, which is our $5 tier, now part of the tribe, which is 10, no change there. And then the $20 one is the Delusions of Grandeur. So now they're consistent, uniform quotes, and I can't wait to see how many people sign up for I Care.
So now we need a $50 tier that's for Mandalore.
I know, right? Yeah, we've got that chant going on.
That's getting ambitious, though.
It really is. So, okay, so again, we've got those two shows coming up on Sunday. Lauren, rumor has it that you've got a new show out here recently. What's going on at Jedi Novel Archives?
Yes, so on Tuesday, so yesterday, I posted my review for Quest for Planet X, which is the new middle grade High Republic novel by Tessa Gratton. So that's currently out. And then
thumbs up, thumbs down, quickly.
Oh, thumbs up.
Good.
It's a continuation of Quest for the Hidden City. So
Yes.
if you liked Quest for the Hidden City, you'll probably like this one
Okay.
in a nutshell. And then Tuesday, I have a pre-release review for Path of Vengeance coming out too.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
that's going to be a biggie.
I'm excited for that one. I know that's a highly anticipated one for a lot of people.
Yes.
So
That's Kevin Scott, right?
That's
Yes.
Kevin Scott. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
There you go. How many did we say we could do? Is it 10 each? 20
No,
each?
Unlimited. Unlimited.
You've already gone over your allotment of 0.
I would like to see how many we could get.
We don't have a counter.
We should have a counter.
And we don't want to get into an argument through Grogu
Okay, we're not doing that.
IG-12 between you and me.
No, it's not going to. Okay. All right. Let's get this back on track because it will go off many times throughout the night. Okay. So that's the business side of things. And let's talk about the show. Let's talk about the return. I guess the name, just quickly, the return. It's IG-11. It's Bocaton. It's Mando in some regards to where he was at the beginning of season 1. We'll talk about the reset, which I'm calling, they could have called this the reset as far as I'm concerned, because I think it's essentially what we've done here. But Jonesy, I'll start with you. I guess give us your opening thoughts on how you felt about the episode and what was it like watching all the anxiety that was building up about all the horrible things that was going to happen and how it was going to end. None of that really panned out. But your thoughts there.
Yeah, I mean, pacing. I mean, the first thing that jumped out to me was just the pacing. This thing just kept moving and moving and moving and just picking up steam, and it just didn't want to stop. And then until the very end, when it finally took a breath. So that was actually kind of refreshing, because we compared this with like Andor, which was very methodical and very calculated and very intentional in a lot of ways. This one, all of a sudden, like some of the episodes consistency wise, for what the pacing was, and then this one's just breakneck speed all the way through, which I think really helped keep it all the way through. One thing I would have liked to was have a little bit more spacing in this one, just a little bit, but a chance to breathe, ease that pacing back. Because I think there were some storylines we probably could have explored a little bit here with an extra episode or two that would have maybe just brought things together a little bit more, so they weren't so compact, especially with Gideon and the clones and some of those, other kind of tangential stories. We didn't need them, of course. This works just fine, but it would have been nice to have some of that. But overall, I mean, this was a really enjoyable episode. I mean, the music delivered on kind of the epic Star Wars-ness of it. The music has been kind of all over the place this season in some ways about how well it fit, but I think for this episode, it kind of felt like a return to that cinematic feel. A lot of theme music. So if you love the theme music, you got it 5 or 6 or 17 different ways. So you had to be happy there, right?
Yeah.
And we got Gideon and armor. I mean, we just got all the things that we wanted. Did we get all the clarifications? No. Did we get all the big reveals? Did we get a cliffhanger or whatever? No. But I think all the major check boxes we need to check, I think we did get most of them, if not all of them, to some degree.
Yeah. So Lauren, I know I've teased you enough about the anxiety, but it was kind of real, and I don't blame you, because it was a very doom and gloom kind of night, a week, maybe even 2 weeks leading up to the finale. Before we came on air, we were kind of talking about, we've kind of done this to ourselves in a lot of ways, and I mean ourselves as Star Wars fans or just people that watch television in general these days, that we've been through kind of a dark period of television. I'll throw out Game of Thrones because I think that's where most of us kind of lean into when we're talking about that. So I think it was probably not atypical or unusual that people were expecting the worst of things and that other shoe to fall and drop. But then if you go back to what Dave Filoni said at Celebration, he actually said, we're going to have a happy ending, but it's going to give you a lot to think about. I think people took that and they didn't take them literally enough. I think they took that as wow, we're going to get a happy ending, and then we're going to be completely floored and destroyed, right, emotionally by something. And that led into speculation about Din leaving or being killed and Grogu disappearing and God knows whatever else. I mean, it was just all out there. But all said and done, super happy ending. I think it was like, it felt more Star Warsy to me than it probably ever has in this series. But what were your opening thoughts, and how'd you feel about the final episode?
Yeah, so I was extremely nervous going into this episode, partially because with last week's episode, even that one, it was kind of pushing me a little bit on kind of where we left off. I know
Yeah.
that I'm a little bit more sensitive than the average person, so I kind of took that with a grain of salt. But after that, then like seeing so many of the theories circulating online about like Din getting mind flayed, about just all these terrible things that could happen, it was really stressing me out. And usually I wouldn't put any stock into theories like that, but after last week, it did kind of make me nervous. And so, I mean, I was making some jokes on social media about like about like I didn't know if I'd be able to survive this episode, but thank God like none of that came to pass. So,
Yeah.
I'm happy that we got a happy ending, which is obviously what I was hoping for. I'm happy that we got what felt like a very Star Warsy ending to me. So,
Mhm.
I'm glad about that too. So, I do agree that there were times that the pacing did feel a little bit like, whoa, there's so much going on. I'm like, don't look away from the TV for even a second. But but like my relief is like so much more than any of those issues. So like I'm kind of willing to put all that aside because I'm just glad that everybody's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. The episode, like chapter 23, didn't do us a lot of favor. I mean, we had Paz die, and it felt like we were kind of heading to a really, Empire Strikes Back kind of ending, Revenge of the Sith almost in some regards. And that didn't happen. So quickly, I guess on my thoughts, like this episode, honestly, I was talking to a group, and I'm on a Facebook group, and I mentioned that I don't like, for this series in particular, I don't remember feeling the level of anxiety. And some of this is being caught up in the mainstream media of things. Oh, and just really quickly, what I think felt different about this one too was that all of those rumors and the dark shadows or the dark clouds about who was going to live and the mind flaying and all that stuff, that started to permeate into like mainstream media.
Yes.
And it would make sense because this is The Mandalorian, arguably the biggest thing on Disney Plus, right? But they picked this up and it started it was like wildfire. You couldn't just go into any kind of normal, outside of like you said, the main staple Star Wars covering type sites, right? They already had this stuff. But when it permeates the mainstream media and people are talking about it that aren't really even Star Wars fans, and you got people asking you questions. I heard, the series is going to be over and Din Djarin's not going to die. That's when this kind of hysteria and sensationalism started with a lot of it. So I totally get that. But for me, what I was going to say is when I was watching this episode, I couldn't remember another episode where I felt the level of anxiety and the tension that was happening. It just kept building and building, and then it would release because things that I thought were going to happen didn't happen. I thought, well, crap, now it's really going to happen, or we're in for something that I wasn't really at all expecting. So all that was really good. Like I actually enjoyed that. So some of that again is the where the rumor started, and some of it is just Rick Famuyiwa. I mean, I think he did an amazing job. If you look at how much they tackled in essentially 30 minutes, because once you take out the front and ends of it, I mean, this was jam-packed with all kinds of stuff happening. You have multiple fronts, multiple battles going on. There was a trade-off of battles. People were coming and going out of scenes. There was some really great shots where, like, Axwell, like, I mean, I had him on a cross ready just to kill him, right? And now I feel like, man, this guy was like the hero of Mandalore. He was flying into space on a jetpack, risking his life, and crashed that whole thing down and screaming for Mandalore at the very end. Like, there was just, my emotions were kind of all over the place with these guys, with all of the characters, but there were a lot of great moments in there where you see that single Mandalorian flying through the air in the clouds. Later on, you had that scene where the gauntlets were heading into the atmosphere, and then he holds on that shot, and next thing you know, the TIE interceptors are going out. Anytime we had the Mandalorians flying through the air, it reminded me of like a Japanese anime, and I hate to use this analogy, but it's the best I got. in Japanese anime, there's always like whenever robots or big droids or whatever fire off rockets, there's like a cluster of them that just kind of swarm and you can see the trail going through. It was like right out of animation. So I mean, there was a lot on screen, a lot happening, and I really enjoyed all of it. I thought he did a really good job. I don't know, and it did feel rushed. It did feel like the pacing felt so aggressive that you're right. It felt like we could have made this an hour and probably felt good or had more time to sit with this stuff. But yeah, I don't know. There's probably more to be said, and we'll probably cover this when we talk about the season kind of wrap up show or maybe on the Patreon show. But there's something to be said about, could we have used the time from other episodes, or could we have worked some of this stuff up a little bit earlier or whatever to kind of make that all better? But I guess the other thing I'll quickly just chime in on is I've seen some really frivolous complaints about this episode. Everything from what we talked about at the very beginning, which was that little spotlight and the lights going out. I know it feels different. That is a technique that has been used forever in television. And the only thing I would say, and I'm not going to get on a soapbox about this, but if you look at the history of Star Wars, the evolution of Star Wars, even with George Lucas, 100% George Lucas, but even beyond, this is, to me, just feels like a natural evolution. Star Wars has always borrowed from other techniques from other places. It's George Lucas's story. It's his characters. It's his world. But at the end of the day, I mean, he's really just borrowing from so many things. And even like the wipes and all that stuff that we associate with Star Wars, those weren't necessarily his. Those were used a long time ago. So I get that it does feel different. I think given the scene, like if they use that every time or they use it inappropriately in a moment that didn't make sense, that'd be one thing. But to end on Grogu, I think was like perfect. I really enjoyed that. And I just say, welcome to the new technique. I hope, hopefully they don't overuse it, but it was a nice little touch in my opinion. So.
Especially with that little Luke callback with him floating the frog as well. I feel like that made the spotlight just extra cute.
So, all right, cute. Well, let's, what's that?
As it was cute. I didn't care for it either, though. It was just out of place. It was just kind of weird. It was just unexpected, I think. But I'm not going to go and crucify it though either. I just wasn't for me. But it was just a little out of place for what we normally have. It was like, oh, let's do this, and all right. But anyway, it was cute though.
Yeah,
especially for a series finale. That was intentional, by the way.
Sorry,
series finale, not season.
Series finale. Well, we'll talk about that too. Okay, so let's kind of break this down. So it starts with we pick up right afterwards, and like we mentioned, they kind of filmed us back to back. It was all kind of one shot. And this is it's funny because Katie Sackhoff, where she made that comment about like, holy crap, what about all the other stuff that we filmed? Well, now we know exactly what she's talking about because there were large segments of filming that were combined and crammed into 30 minutes here in this episode. But it does pick up right after, I guess, from the last episode, and we get into Din Djarin being freed. So let's just talk quickly about that whole sequence, because, I said when they showed those barriers the first time that we would see them again, because I don't understand why they would spend the money on that and just kind of be that's kind of neat. But I get why they did it. I enjoy the sequence. I mean, it gave R5 kind of a moment to shine and kind of be the hero. I still can hear Neck Shield screaming in my head over and over again because of this scene. But the whole rescue prior to that was very quick. Like, this is one of the moments that I felt like it was super expedited. And I should have said this at the very beginning. There is a level of suspension of disbelief that comes with this episode in particular, this season in particular, which I'm okay with. I'm not saying anything about that, but I do have questions like, how did he find him that quickly? Because when we last left off, he was running away. Next thing you know, he's right there. Like, hey, I found him, and I can chalk it up to the Force pretty easily. But I don't know I don't have a good theory beyond that. But so Jonesy, on the liberation of Mando or his release by Grogu, what did you think there?
I'm glad you mentioned that you had to suspend a lot of disbelief for this episode. I think that's what I texted you this morning. You asked if I had watched it yet. And I was like, I had to suspend a lot, but that's okay. This is what we do, for all of this. I actually like that we got straight to it and we got that out of the way, because it really did open the door for everything else that we had come after. We didn't have to linger on some of this. And what we had talked about in the final episode speculation, a few days ago, was really, that was the end game, was trying to free Din Djarin, rather than it be pretty much the entire episode of that final confrontation, from the rescue through the final confrontation, just constant. And so I like how they did that. I thought that was actually worked really well. How Grogu gets there so fast, or how they got there at all is again, you just have to kind of just chalk that up to Star Wars magic. Yeah, and he found them. But again, it was cool to be able to see that, Din Djarin wasn't just giving up either. He was resourceful. He was trying to get out of it, and then to have Grogu to come in, make use of the suit. Now the suit makes a lot more sense, of course, because he had that moment to be able to do it. Was able to crush the blaster and save his life. So those types of things. He didn't use the Force. Knock it off.
No, I'm saying that was the scene. I was replaying that scene because remember he grabbed the blaster and then.
It's a reenactment.
The reenactment. Thank you.
I don't know who's more obnoxious. Gosh. But anyway, I like that we got straight to it though. I'm glad that we got that rescue out of the way. He wasn't the MacGuffin. He got to play a part in the role, Din Djarin, specifically. And actually, it was said in the chat here, Risk was saying that, Din is a certified, bad, bad mamma jamma. And so he got to shine. Everybody got to shine in this episode, even down to Moff Gideon. Everybody had a moment. Every single character, no matter whether they were a stormtrooper or, a commando or the Praetorian Guard or Gideon or Bocaton or whoever, everybody kind of had a moment. The armor in particular, right? And so that was really cool that everybody kind of had their time to shine. So I really enjoyed that. And that was one of the really nice things about this just being a totally action-packed episode. You get all of that. And the hallway scene was quite great. I mean, again, why there are no handrails and why do we put holes in the floors? We don't know, but Empire, long live the Empire, as far as I'm concerned.
Terrible design. Yeah. So, Lauren, seeing the baby come back, the minute when he said, "Are you with me?" and he went, "Yeah," like I thought about you immediately. I was like, "Oh, she's gonna love that." It was just like red meat for Lauren at that point because he's so happy to see him. But it was nice to see that the baby did get to free him, even though it kind of happened, quickly or whatever. But yeah, this is where I felt like, wow, okay. To Jonesy's point, I was thinking this would be like towards 3/4 of the way in the episode, and they were like 4 minutes in, and he's freed him. I thought, well, crap, now what's going to happen? So. I guess your thoughts on that, and then we'll kind of segue into our 5 hero of Mandalore as well.
Yeah, I was very glad that they did that quickly and they didn't torture me any more than they already had last week. Because I was afraid of like what we were going to see leading up to Din being rescued. So the fact that he got out of that situation immediately was good for me. And I agree about. I mean, I feel like with this show as a whole, I mean, you kind of have to suspend disbelief many times because Din has just been set up as the hero that's always able to get out of pretty much anything. So because
that's
of that,
what heroes do. Yeah.
Right. So because of that, this time it worked out for the best, thankfully.
Yeah. So R5 had his moments here when they needed him to kind of open up the door, the blast doors, the ray shields or whatever he called them. There was I didn't know he could fly. And do you remember here, I'll wax some prequel hate.
I know where you're going with this.
Oh my goodness. So like go back to like 2002 or 2002, Attack of the Clones, or maybe it was Revenge of the Sith. Was it Revenge of the Sith?
I think at first it was an Attack of the Clones, yeah.
Yeah. Well, whenever we learned that R2 could fly, holy bananas. You would have thought this was just the end of Star Wars. And I mean, there were people ready just to slay George Lucas. Because R2 couldn't fly. Why wouldn't he have flown in the original trilogy, et cetera, et cetera? But this was I had that moment. I thought, wow, people are going to really freak out because R5 is such more a complex character now than we ever thought. He has so many bells and whistles that we never knew he had. But I mean, it's fine. Like I don't really care about it. I just thought it was interesting that he could fly. Number one, he gets into his little BattleBots moment there. I did like that he was a hero, and to hear like Mando talk so, proudly of a droid he's come a long way from season 1 when he's talking to a droid saying, R5, good job, buddy. Like that's just so different. So I'm glad to see all that. But any other thoughts on R5's little heroic moment here?
I liked it. I mean, it was kind of cool. Then it was really cute though. He was peeking around the corner, with the mouse droids, with the little police mouse droids, everything. It was just silly. It was funny. That was like perfect Star Wars. Do you remember why they came up with a reason why R2 didn't use the rockets in the original trilogy? Do you remember the explanation that we got? I think it may have come from Pablo
I remember
Hidalgo,
that
people.
Yeah, no, I remember that this was part of the discussion, but I
They
don't
were
remember
out
exactly.
of warranty. They were out of
I was
warranty.
literally gonna guess because he's old by that point.
Yeah, it was. I
Wow.
think that if I remember right, I think it was because they were like out of warranty. Now for R5, these things have been out of warranty for even longer than that, right? So
Yeah,
it was,
Maybe he took better care of him. He took better
was
care of
Pelimato.
himself than R2 because
Peli-
R2 was doing all sorts of crazy stuff all his life. R5 was just living a very quiet, sheltered life.
true.
And Pelly just takes extremely good care of all of her, droids and people that work for her too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, she's known to
absolutely.
outfit and like soup up people and vehicles and stuff like that. So spaceships,
Yeah,
why not a
she's
droid?
diligent.
There we go. We just solved that one.
Yeah, she really is. But it was really cool seeing R5 kind of get that moment that he wasn't just relegated to doing nothing, and that they had to scomp him in and things like that and give him just something to do. And again, it added a little bit of that tension, but also it brought that comical moment to it too, of just the different activities that he had to go and try to come around, and that he didn't have to get involved and get into his own little fight. He could just kind of blast off and leave. I thought it was perfect. It wasn't too much. They didn't do too much with it. It was the right amount, and then move him out, get him out, and then let it be over. And
Yeah.
so it was, to me, it was just actually like a perfect little cameo type of scene for him.
Well, let's talk about the liberation of Mandalore. And I've grouped some of the scenes because we were cutting back and forth so many times. So I've kind of lumped a lot of this together. But let's talk about the what I'm calling the liberation of Mandalore. So this is everything from Axwell's, committing to getting help, seeking reinforcements, which I thought was a big lie, to, them evacuating the cruiser and jumping into the gauntlets and then coming into a fight the other Beskar troopers. Did we ever get a name still? Did they ever say, like, in the audio descriptions or anything about what we're supposed to be calling these guys?
The subtitles call them commandos.
Commandos?
That was it, yeah. They just Commando 1, Commando 2. That was what they were listed at. There was nothing spectacular about them.
Yeah, all right.
At one point, that one of them almost seemed robotic. The one that was talking to Gideon,
Yeah.
the way that he was speaking was just very robotic, and the rest of them had much more human. So I'm just chalk it up to probably one of the cast, in the suit or doing an acting. I think they may have hired maybe they hired some 501st or something. They're not really supposed to be actors, I suppose, but.
Right. But Lauren, so was Axwell's number one on your list of suspects as a traitor? And then 2, and I want to lump this into, although it's a little bit later. I mean, how heroic was this guy? Because not only did he go and evacuate everybody from the freighter that got blown to pieces, then, I mean, he risks his life to crash this thing into the middle. And essentially, I mean, he kills Gideon. You could argue it was, I don't know if you can argue it was anybody else, but he definitely kills Gideon and wipes out all the other forces there. But how did you have him going into this?
I never really picked who I thought the betrayer was. I didn't really have my heart set on anybody other than it not being the armorer. But I mean, so going into it, I felt, somewhat skeptical of him, but I also did kind of believe that once Bocaton proved herself to him and he accepted that, I wanted to take his word for that was the truth, because he did seem like somebody who, above everything else, cares about like his people and his homeland. So I liked it that they ended up sticking with that, and that he ended up risking his life to do the right thing and following through by killing Gideon. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah. And I was, as I was watching this, I was like, okay, here we go. We're going to see this jerk face. Oh, wait, no, he's okay. So yeah, maybe he is going up to the freighter, but once he gets to the freighter, he's going to do something terrible. And the first thing he says is, Bocaton needs our help. And I thought, okay, well, wait a minute.
He's just proving you wrong.
This is probably a front. He's just going to get everybody out of here. And then once that ship, he's going to call Gideon. And the next thing you know, he's like, flying this thing down on a holy terror, fighting off the TIE fighters. And I thought, well, he's just playing this up, right? To make it look real. I had a hard time with this, Jonesy. What about you?
When the other dude like turned around and shared a look with him, that was the moment I was like, okay, yeah, this is definitely going to happen. There is something up his sleeve. But then you're right. No, he just starts punching everything and starts taking on the TIE fighters, the TIE interceptors. And I was like, okay, we're going to do this. Now, I was wondering why he didn't get out until the very end. I mean, as he started going down further, I was like, okay, this makes sense. He's got to plow into this place. But,
yeah,
but it felt like, okay, the only one left is really him, because the armorer is leading the charge on the battlefield, right? We didn't get the space battle.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Which I'm kind of okay with. And Bocaton actually talks about that, though. We can't beat these guys in the air. We just don't. Yeah. We can't keep up with the TIE interceptors. those crazy TIE bombers, they can do whatever they want, I guess. But I mean, but it made more sense that the Mandalorians did it in a more hand-to-hand combat with their jetpacks, using their agility, using the different weapons, using the armor. It made a lot of sense, and so I think it actually worked out a lot better by not having that space component. Now I'm wondering where the TIE fighters went, but whatever. But with Axwell, I'm glad that we got to see him be a genuine character, and that there wasn't some extra layer of subterfuge going on. It didn't really feel right to me to do it. We were trying to pick one, right? But it just didn't. It felt like you'd have more to unravel if you had anybody step up and say, ha ha ha, working with Gideon. This was just much more straightforward. I think it worked better in that way too.
Yeah.
I just always love it when and we kind of got this with Paz too, like the character that has made us skeptical of them. I love it when they prove us wrong.
Yeah, and this was, for me, like this was, I already had posters made up. I lost some money on this whole thing. It's fine. But
well, he's still a jerk though. I mean, if it makes you feel better, Axwell was still a jerk. I
would say he's still a jerk. No, he really did a great job. Like everything he did was heroic, even to the very end. Like he's the guy that led the freaking chants of, for Mandalore, screaming at the top of his lungs. And I thought, well, okay, yeah, but he's probably got something up his sleeve still. No,
and when he said, I have my orders to Bocaton, I'm like, oh yeah, you do, don't you? Like then my head just kept like, oh, this is the chance. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and then it just didn't. So I was relieved though. I'm glad they didn't go that route.
He's still on my list though. The that whole space battle, or what I would call it, I mean, it makes sense. So I was trying to rationalize, like, I never thought he would get up there because I didn't think they would bring the fleet into like sub orbit.
Yeah, they were in low orbit or upper atmosphere, I guess, right?
Because when they left, they were definitely in space. And that's it's more nuance than that, of course, but coming into low orbit, okay, I get it. Maybe he could fly up because it's not, I don't know I don't know how many miles it is from the floor or the surface of Mandalore to the atmosphere, but if it's Earth, it's like 35 miles. Seems pretty far, but if you're just going up, yeah, it's fine. I get it. I mean, nonetheless, it was still a brave act to even do that because that's pretty dangerous, right?
They all seem to learn their lesson about how much fuel they put in their jetpacks, though, right?
Oh, I don't even want to think about this. It's so stressful. If I had a jetpack, I'd be stressing all the time. Like they don't even have meters on this stuff. Like how do they know?
It's probably integrated into their gauntlets, right?
I have a Honda Odyssey that tells me how many miles I get before I run out of gas, and they don't think to put this on the jetpacks. I just don't really understand.
It wasn't a concern this time.
Okay, so let's. So the capital ship, by the way, that whole space battle, I thought was really great. Like it felt like they blew their entire budget on this episode. Like for season 3, 90% went to these last 2 episodes, and the other 10% went to the first 7, which is fine. I enjoyed that, or first 6, I guess. But when you hear that, Lady Kryze, your reinforcements have arrived, holy crap, that was like chills for me because it was right up there with "you're all clear, kid. Let's blow this thing, get out of here." But yeah, there's more of us is another one, right? It was just a very Star Wars-y moment, but it was also kind of just reassurance that she is a good person, at least for now. Like I think I was ruling her out already, but she was kind of the poster child for who the traitor was going to be or who the spy was going to be. But I mean, she proved time and time again in this episode, like Axwell, that at least for now, definitely on the side of things. But yeah, that whole line and the way she delivered it, and then just the action sequence of that, and I'll talk about my Twitter comment here in a minute, was just like eye candy and ear candy, and I loved everything about that battle. I think who was it? Risk had chimed in earlier and said the armor flying around beating people with the tools and the air shots were sick. Definitely, like she was just leveling people, almost like Thor up there, with his hammer, taking these people out left and right. So what do you think, Jonesy?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, they had these heroic poses. She's flying through the air with her tools, and like posing, which was, I mean, was a little silly, but it was also like, yeah, go get them with your tools while everyone uses a gun. But I tell you what, but Bocaton, like pulling out the saber and extending it while she's flying and leading the charge, absolutely epic. Having it go through someone from the back and then having kind of a heroic pose after that. I mean, that's Star Wars. That's Marvel. That's just these super heroic. Yeah, there's just these super heroic pose moments that you just can't get enough of. You just eat it up, even though you know it's kind of campy and things like that. It just is so perfect. We want our heroes to be bigger than life. We want them. These are the moments we have in our head when we think we do something like, "Hi, I finally worked out the bugs on my cell phone." Because I'm an Android user, we have lots of bugs sometimes. I mean, but it's just one of those moments, like, you just feel like this is heroic. I should, like, pose, and these guys get to do it, and it's pretty amazing. So I love that we bring that to the screen, give them the moment. And like I said, most people had a moment in this episode, but like the armor and Bocaton flying around. And again, the CGI was actually really strong here. I think really good. There was a lot of motion, so you can get away with a lot of things, but it was just really sound here and really, 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 really worked well.
Mm-hmm. What do you want to add to that, Lauren, as far as this whole kind of action sequence between Bo-Katan, the armor, the craziness? There was what's her name? Koska had a cool moment too. I think it was Koska, where she kind of flew in on one of the platforms. She slid, let the gravity fall off, and then she fired her jetpack on and then used her knee rockets at one point. It was either her or Bo-Katan, I forget.
That was Bo-Katan, yeah.
Oh, was it? Oh, that was like eye candy as well. But Lauren, what did you think about all this whole sequence? There's a lot here, so.
Yeah, I mean, Jonesy really hit the nail on the head with the larger than life thing. I feel like that was just like, it made it really exciting. And it also gave you that feeling that, like, yeah, they've got this in the bag now. Like, now they're coming back in and they're not gonna, they're not gonna leave here without getting the best of these guys. So it was exciting to watch. And it gives you like that kind of like triumphant feeling of like, it's like you're just watching TV, but your adrenaline is going. So
yeah.
So I really liked that scene.
Yeah, this was good stuff. I'm going to pull this up just really quickly. I don't know if you can't even read that, can you? Let me see if I can blow that up here. I posted this on Twitter, but essentially what it says is, that's a little too much. It says, George Lucas was inspired by 1930s Flash Gordon when writing Star Wars. Jon Favreau was inspired by 1980 Flash Gordon when writing Star Wars. And the reason I posted this was because that scene where she ignites a lightsaber and then they kind of dive down. If you go back and watch this 1980s version of Flash Gordon, the movie, you've got the music playing there from Queen as well. When it happens, I know this sounds really weird for anybody that hasn't seen the movie, but I actually want to take that music and put it over that scene and recreate that scene, because it's almost, I'm not gonna say it's shot for shot, but there's no question in my mind that this was inspired, because it's very similar. This guy that's flying around, the Hawkman, he says Hawkman dive. He pulls out his thing and they all kind of dive down and there's a big air battle going on. So I just love stuff like that, because it does feel like they're pulling from stuff that they saw and grew up with, and going back to what we were talking about earlier. But there was a lot of adrenaline pumping, and this is where I was, like I said earlier, there was so much happening. The anxiety and the intensity of everything that was on screen was really, really cool stuff. Okay, so let's move into Gideon's plan. So this was some confirmations, I think, for us, stuff that we had speculated as far back as season 1 about why Gideon was wanting Grogu, somebody that was force sensitive. Even back then, I think we had said he was probably trying to infuse midi-chlorians or create force sensitive beings, right, in some way. Eventually, I think that led us to think to the theory of that it was himself that he was trying to do, or create force sensitive beings of some sort. All that was confirmed, including the fact that he already had clones. I think where we were off, or at least where I was off, was I thought the commandos already had Gideon clones in him. It sounds like he wasn't there yet, but that batch of clones, no pun intended, that batch of clones that were sitting there in the tanks were his next group that was going to go into. Jonesy, I'll turn it over to you on this, but the last thing I'll say is, like, it's just so weird that they designed these control boards to not only keep the clones alive, but in the event that they need to blow everything up and expel all the water, there is that button as well. So the engineering that goes into this and the thoughtfulness, the proactive thoughtfulness, is just amazing in Star Wars. But go on, please.
And that is just a bunch of buttons. I mean, it's incredible what they can accomplish with just a bunch of white and red buttons for the most part. Well, and again, thank you, Grogu. Appreciate that. So, I mean, but it was also the idea what he probably did was just overpressurize them and they exploded and they drowned. I guess is basically what he said. They drowned.
Way to take the magic out of it, but okay.
I'm Star Wars explaining this.
I know.
Anyway, yeah, but again, it was that we finally got confirmation of that they were a lot more mature. Again, you have to suspend a little bit of belief to get to this point from where we saw them on Navarro. And again, a lot of it was, we had talked about this in the last episode too, with what Pershing was talking about in the original, in that episode on Coruscant. bringing the best of both worlds. And of course, Gideon confirmed all of that for us, that exactly what they were trying to do. But again, that also tells you Pershing, it leads a lot of questions about Pershing, about whether, is he's, I think it just reaffirms my opinion on this, that he is just there for the science. Can I do it? It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It's more about, can I do something? And then we'll figure out the application for it later. Then you can morally judge it all you want. But I like that we finally got this confirmation of what he was trying to do, and that again, the him in the armor was the next step, except for the Force part. Now, the question I have was whether or not he actually got the Force to work in these clones and had it. My interpretation was he still hadn't got there yet, but he was very, very close in some way. So again, why they still wouldn't need Grogu for this? That part still eludes me a little bit. If I don't understand why you wouldn't need more material to continue testing, if Pershing said that they were out, right? They needed something more from the donor. And so where else would they be getting this from? Because this is all off the books, right? And I think what this tells us about Gideon's overall master plan is screw Thrawn, right? This is my empire. I'm going to create these super soldiers so that no one can contest me. I am the empire. Everybody else is just a pretender. And so that really confirmed all of that for me.
Yeah. I know you had a good thought there about, because, and this maybe this makes sense, right? We were talking just a couple episodes, the last 2 episodes, how he really wasn't focused on the child anymore, right? He was all about the Darksaber, which we get now why he wanted that thing. But he kind of dropped this whole Grogu midichlorian stuff. Pershing, he really didn't seem like he needed him anymore because he had him mind flayed. Maybe he comes back later still, but it did feel like he dropped that. So the way I kind of interpret that was, I think he's got what he needed, and I think somehow he's been like those in my head, anyways. Those clones were going to be Force sensitive. Maybe they weren't baked; they needed a few more minutes or whatever. But I think he was on track for this, and at some point, and even if he's not, at some point they do have to get there because they do create Snoke, and Snoke is Force sensitive in some way. So they do get to that point with that technology. Whether it's now, maybe feels a little premature in my head. It could be. I don't know, but I think there's probably more on this later. The other thing you said that caught my ear was the fact that where would he be getting midichlorians? Because unless it's like you create one Force sensitive and then you can just reproduce that without the need for more midichlorians. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. We're really getting into the weeds here of cloning technology, and we're not Kaminoan, so this is a dangerous path. But yeah, I think I did like that they kind of closed that book, at least on any speculation or theory as to what he was doing. And just as a side note, and I know we're going to talk about this later too, I think this is where people are like, is the series over? Like, there's so many things that they built up to in season 1 and season 2 and even this season that were just like, whether you like the explanation or not, we're done. Like, we're moving on past this. Like, there's no more to discuss here. Park's closed, Moose out front should have told you kind of stuff. So I can totally see where people would be scratching their heads, because this was a big kind of a thread that had never really been touched, and we had to wait almost, full 2 seasons to finally get the answer to it. So, Lauren, let's talk about. Excuse me, I want to segue into the battle with Gideon, because I think this is where I think most of my anxiety was coming from, because it starts off pretty. It's Din versus Moff Gideon. Gideon had his suit was powered, which I wasn't expecting, right? You could hear the motorized pieces moving on. And I thought, okay, well, that makes sense. It's a Vader-ish kind of thing, right? On top of that, he was a full Mandalorian armor. He had his little stick that he used a little bit later when Bocaton showed up, but it wasn't going well for Din initially. I guess kind of your thoughts on what were some of the things that stood out for you during this fight, leading up until the baby showing up.
Yeah, it was almost like he became the Dark Trooper in a way. So, yeah, that was intimidating. But I will say that, like, once after Din got past those guys at the beginning, in this scene, I did kind of have my confidence back that somehow he was going to get out of it, even though Gideon seemed like he had no weaknesses. I was like, something's going to have to give, because he wouldn't have got past those guys just to get killed. I don't know. To me, it just didn't. I don't know. I had the faith again by that point, I guess. So it was scary, but I knew someone was going to come through for him. I don't think I was expecting it to go down the way that it did with Grogu. I was expecting somebody, first of all, more skilled than Grogu to show up. And then once Grogu showed up, I was like, oh, okay, so IG-11 is just going to shoot all these people. And that didn't happen either. So I was like, okay, now I don't know where this is going.
Well, not only did that not happen for you, but then they chased the poor baby down the hallway by himself, and Mando's screaming, no, no, or what was he? Yeah, I think he was screaming.
Yeah.
No. What did he say? He said something. Was it no, no, no?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, holy, this is like terrifying now because there's child's alone with these 3 Praetorian guards. You know, we know what they did in The Last Jedi. Well, not much, they died, but we know what they did to Paz Vizsla at least. And I was like freaking out, like who's going to save this child? I thought it's going to have to be Force. And this is what we predicted, right? We figured that if there was anything that was going to kind of turn the tide against the Praetorian guards, it was going to have to be Grogu using the Force in some way. I did like that he never killed anybody. Like, he actually never hurt anyone the entire time. He kept just messing with them, like stopping their blades, shooting things over, knocking them off. I mean, he got to kind of force push one of them, but for the most part, he was taking a very, pacifist approach to helping out.
I guess it's the Jedi way. Even though I was hoping he would shoot them, he wasn't willing to. I guess he didn't feel it was right. But
I wanted him to force choke like he did with Cara Dune, but that didn't happen either. So, Jonesy, were you?
No, I like that we continue to get the theme of where the Mandalorians are stronger together. So it took more than one of them to beat Gideon. Mm-hmm. It took more than one of them to beat the Praetorian Guards. It's just what they do. They band together. They work as a team. They complement one another. They find ways to benefit from each other's skills and abilities and overcome really difficult odds. I mean, the Praetorian Guards are the elite guards. I mean, we saw that too. These were solid. I mean, these were really good. I thought this action sequence, it wasn't a cakewalk either for Gideon or for the Praetorian Guard. So I think that was really, great that there had to be something unique to make a difference. And Grogu using the Force, of course, just makes total sense. The way he was using it was still responsible, controlled, calm, doing the right thing, didn't kill anybody, which I think was important to, for Grogu as a character at this point as well. And then they go back over to Din. Thank you. And then to go over back to the Moff Gideon fight, though, I really like this one. Apparently, not only is Beskar flame retardant, but so is the clothing underneath Beskar.
I kept wondering about that too, but I'm like, I'm not going to think about it. Yeah, I was expecting the cape or at least to like flame up, and no, it's fine.
Something. Yeah, no, everything is flame retardant, apparently. They have their proper PPE on, so that's really...
He thought about it beforehand.
They did. Yeah. He's like, you know what? That Moff Gideon's probably got a flamethrower. Mm-hmm. But I like that we do get just... Each one of them has their own, Bocaton flying in, goes one-on-one. She's kind of holding her own, but then the tide turns again because Gideon is amped up, right? We need Gideon to be this big bad character because he has been the entire series, right? He's always a step ahead. He's always got the best toys. He's got the best trinkets. He's teasing them. He's trying to light the fire. You take away the Mandalorian trinkets and they're garbage, right? They're just not worth anything. And so that he's still taunting them, throughout all of this and his overconfidence, but he's backing it up. And I think that was really important for him to fill out and finish out, this big bad villain that he has been throughout the series, and that he is just ruthless. And he doesn't matter what he does. He'll destroy the Darksaber, which he really wants, more as a symbol and to be able to, purely lead from his respect. I think it was just a symbol of power more than anything else is kind of what I took from that. Mm-hmm. Everything from that to just completely destroying and holding this grudge against Din Djarin in particular in the Mandalorian culture.
Yeah. Yeah, there was when just to bring this up too, when Mando got stabbed kind of in the shoulder. By the way, the sequences of fights and the way it was very cool to see Mandalorians fight other quote Mandalorians. It's a very different tactic. Like they're actually aiming for the creases, and Mando had that one moment where he was kind of shooting up under the neck, to get under the armor and stuff. So I really enjoyed that aspect, and even though it was kind of subtle, you could definitely see there was these were very calculated attacks and not just your normal kind of fighting styles that you would expect, right? Because of the Beskar. So that said, there was the freak out moment when Grogu, when he witnessed them getting stabbed, like it almost sounds like there was a gas coming out of him when he saw that happen, which I thought was really terrifying, to be honest. But then all that's going on, and then Bo-Katan flies in and says, I got this, go save your kid. And I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. Now she's got the Darksaber. She's going to go up against Moff Gideon.
Will do, Mom.
Right. Thanks, honey. It's actually probably more appropriate. But I mean, we got everything. I mean, we got a Bocaton versus Gideon. We got Gideon versus Din. Then we got the family, the small, young family fighting Gideon as well a little bit later.
It was like the Incredibles for a minute.
It kind of was, yeah. Before I want to talk about the Darksaber in just 1 second. I do want to acknowledge the comments quickly. Juan says, "Hey guys, I just finished watching the season finale after work. Had to tune in for your thoughts. Thanks, Juan. Appreciate you being here." Katya talking about Moff Gideon's plans. I don't think he succeeded, but I don't think he's dead either. And there's another question here related to this, which we'll get to here in a little bit. The last we saw Gideon, he had a mustache, yet he was absent here. I know a lot of people have picked up on that and brought that up, both for him and his clones, making me wonder if it's a hint that this wasn't our Gideon, but rather a clone. And so that question is Gideon dead? It's in the show notes. We'll get to it a little bit later. And then we'll talk about Grogu here in just a little bit for Issa. I know she's been chiming in on some stuff. So, okay, so let's talk about the Darksaber, because this was a moment for me that I was crushed, no pun intended. I wasn't expecting this. It was a little shocking. I'm not going to put it up there with the Razor Crest being destroyed, but it does feel like it's yet another kind of one of these things that I've bought a lot of replicas of that now doesn't exist in Star Wars, and I don't know how I feel about that personally from a financial perspective. But I do get the symbolism here, right? It was destroyed and not necessary to rule Mandalore, right? I think that was the whole point. And we clearly see that at the very end. Everybody's fallen in line with Bocaton for all the reasons that Din Djarin said. It had nothing to do with the Darksaber. I still have some thoughts, and we'll get to that. I think we have a question here about will we see the Darksaber again? I think we do. I just feel like it's one of those. Thank you, Grogu. I think it's just one of those iconic weapons, like the Skywalker saber, or I don't know. There's probably other ones that I'm not thinking of right now. But I would like to see it a little bit later. I don't know that we need it anytime soon, but I think there's a story here, in how do we repair it and how do we bring it back, and I don't know. Jonesy, what do you think? I know you were happy to see this thing go.
Well, I wasn't happy to see it go, but I think it was what we talked about earlier in the season, that it needed to go. I mean, we asked the question about what is it that the people want to follow, and Bo-Katan's perspective of it just wave the thing around and people do whatever they want. That's not good enough anymore. Right. We had talked about it more in the context of which means more. If you have the Mythosaur, do you need the Darksaber, and so on and so forth. But I think it was really important, symbolically, that the thing that's supposed to unite the people, it did its job. But now it's time to move forward and evolve into something else and evolve into something better. And we still get the clans. I mean, they're still wearing the helmets, or they're not wearing helmets, right? So we've somehow married that up, and everybody's okay with this, at least for now. And so it's good that we've cast aside some of those shackles from the past. And I think this was one of those instruments that just needed to move beyond. And again, you have a Mythosaur, beneath your feet that you don't even know about. Only two people know about. So you have another symbol of your people's strength and of your people's being as well. And it doesn't have to be this one device that has just created so much drama and so many problems and so much division that we can finally get rid of that and bring everyone together, and not have it be that you don't have to worry about Ragnar thinking that, he's the true rightful heir of the Darksaber because he's a Vizsla.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have to worry about any of that stuff. It's just gone. And I think it's totally fine for it to be gone too.
Yeah. And I'm okay with that. I really am. I don't have a problem with it. Okay, so let's talk about one of the more stressful moments specifically, and this is, again, going back to Grogu and the Praetorian Guards. There's moments in there too. I'll bring up Issa's comment because it's something I have in my show notes here. But Grogu force skipping and running circles and giggling was gold. I appreciated that moment for him to feel powerful rather than just fearful. At least how I'd like to think he got to feel. I don't think she's wrong, because when you look at with the subtitles turned on, he's laughing at this during all of this. There was moments where he looked scared, but then he was actually laughing, having a good time as a kid, just kind of, jumping around and outmaneuvering them or whatever so that they couldn't hit him. But I felt like time was going to run out. And so we needed Din to show up because that wasn't going to go well for him. When he got trapped by the, I don't know what it was, scaffolding or whatever that was, the holographic stuff that he uses. Was this like, did anybody notice, was it similar to what, was it Kenobi being trapped during Attack of the Clones? You remember when it fell on his leg? Like it almost looked like it was they set it up.
Was it really on top of him?
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Well, okay. Stop it.
A little bit, but he was also using the force. It looked like he was using the force to kind of push it up because it was moving a little bit and trying to elevate.
Oh, really? I didn't
then,
catch that. I didn't catch
and then
that.
later on, it's actually off of him. So I think he was using the force, but he was maybe stressed or something like that, so it wasn't working as well.
Yeah. But I did like the fact that it did take both of them here too, right? It wasn't just Din. I don't know that Din honestly could have done it without Grogu. It felt like he was probably unmatched, and of course Grogu would not have probably been able to do this.
Oh,
but
yeah,
I did
exactly. That was the whole point, right?
Yeah, I mean they had their kind of father-son moment, and this is where we really got to see kind of Grogu shine with the Force. But yeah, very stressful. How were you feeling during this scene, Lauren?
Well, when that thing fell on top of Grogu and he screamed, that did upset me. But thankfully that didn't last long because Din came in like right after that. So I did love seeing them team up because it's like y'all were saying, like they wouldn't have been able to pull it off without the both of them. And
Yeah.
getting to see Grogu like actually come into his abilities, even though of course he's still like he has a little bit of a ways to go, but getting to see him actually like improve and take more of a role in these types of scenes is really cool as well.
Mm-hmm. The from there we cut back over to they take care of the Praetorian guards and they head out there, and this is where we got that stronger together moment, that line when hubby walks in with the baby and mom's there fighting Gideon. Of course, the three of them defeated. I did like that he said the Darksaber is gone. You've lost everything, when he really hadn't, right? I mean, in his mind, again, like you said, that's clearly what he was thinking. But this all culminates with Axwell crashing the freighter in, and I love that he said, "I'm coming in hot." I'm like, dude, literally, you were on fire, coming in hot, and didn't give anybody but like what 30 seconds heads up that he was doing this. So maybe he is the spy. I don't know. I'm starting to really doubt him.
So
but
he was really trying to take Bocaton and Din Djarin out at the same time.
Yes, I'm telling you, that's it.
Yep. I agree. I mean,
No, y'all
So,
are negative.
I'm going to take that button away from you.
Whatever happened to Hero of Mandalore?
That was like 20 minutes ago, dude. We've moved on past that.
Much like Axwell, we are ready to turn on him in an instant.
In an instance, yeah. Okay, but let's talk about the big like emotional moment for me was when he crashed that ship and the flame was coming up. We got this beautiful shot. I mean, everything about this scene is just incredible. Everything from the special effects to the fact that if you look at Bocaton, she puts that little buckler on and she puts it in front of Grogu. She doesn't try to protect herself. She's not trying to protect Mando. She's trying to put that in front of the baby. And him using the Force to kind of, we've seen this before, right? We saw it in season 1. But it was very similar to, Kanan Jarrus and what he did to protect his family at the same time. So I love this. I loved everything about it. It's just so beautiful, especially the music here. Like it definitely stood out. It wasn't just a slight variation on what we had seen or heard for a number, like they have done with a number of the other pieces of music in this series so far. But yeah, Jonesy, I guess your thoughts on, any of that there.
I think this is going to be the family Christmas card for them. I mean, I think
that's a good idea. Yeah.
Magical moment. It was perfect. I love the shot behind Grogu where he's got his hands up and it's kind of a partial silhouette. It was just very, framed just so wonderfully.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a lot of fun, though. You're right. It does remind you of Rebels. It reminds you, I mentioned The Incredibles earlier. It's very much like when Violet saves everyone with her little force bubble type of thing. So we've seen this in other places too, but it's just a very heroic moment that in their time of need, again, each one doing the thing that they can do, to protect and take care of one another and fight for one another. Again, and Issa had said the same thing in the chat as well. I mean, this is what they do. This is just an opportunity, an example for them to all come together and do that. And like you said, have a nice family bonding moment.
Yep.
It was also nice too how like through the past 3 seasons we see everybody, whenever Grogu's in trouble, everybody stops everything to save him. So it was really cool getting to see him save his family too.
Yeah. And baby was pooped. Like I was wondering like if he was going to be okay, but I'll give him a free pass. I mean, this was there was a lot here to do what he did. So he fell on his butt. At least he didn't pass out like he used to do.
And I was actually glad they called that back and brought that back because he did exert himself a lot for an extended period of time. And he's still young, so it makes sense that he would be a little bit wiped out, but he wasn't going to fall over and pass out and go to sleep. So I like that we still got that element of it. He's not there all the way yet, but he still, it clearly took a lot of effort to do it all, though.
Yeah. So what happened to everybody else? Like, this is where I was like, okay, so Axe really appreciate what you
They're
did here,
hanging out
buddy.
with the hanging out with the TIE interceptors. 'Cause we don't know what happened with them either.
Yeah, well, they probably are drifting off into space somewhere. They've taken off. That's similar to Vader at the end of A New Hope. But yeah, I mean, like there was a lot of fire, and I mean, I guess the Bando survived. I don't know where all the troopers are. This is all we don't.
Well, they were flying out when the ship was coming in. You could see them all flying out and around it.
Were they?
Crevasse. Yeah, they were
Okay.
all escaping as best they could.
Okay, but this leads into the question about whether or not Gideon is still alive, because we clearly see him engulfed in flames at that point. But then you've got, okay, so maybe it was a clone, right? The Beskar armor seems to be pretty tolerant, so who's to say that he didn't? I don't think he was disintegrated. I mean, I don't know. I can see where he's still alive. I think they've left that open. Whether you believe it or not, is up for debate. But if you had to pick, Jonesy, alive or dead?
I like that. I think he's dead. But again, they've left that door open. There's a lot of interpretation. There's a lot of, you had shown some of the comments earlier. There's a lot of speculation that there's no mustache now. He was more clean shaven and whatever. But I think for the purposes of the story, he's gone. We've ended this. We've moved on. If Tech is dead, Moff Gideon is dead. I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Don't get me on that soapbox.
Yes.
See, Grogu
Lauren, what about you? Are you pro death or pro dead Gideon or pro life Gideon?
I think he's got to be dead. To me, that door did not feel open. I feel like they showed him being consumed by flames. He seemed to be reacting to the flames consuming him. I don't think there's any way he could have survived that. If he did survive that, I honestly think I would be a little bit frustrated because I think it's time to move on from Moff Gideon.
What if he's a clone?
No, I really no.
Still not okay?
No, I think we need to me, like the way that this episode went, it felt like it was wrapping up his whole story.
Yeah.
So I think it feels like we're about to move on to something else. And so if we're moving on to something else, I feel like it would just be like feeling like we're going backwards. If it's like, oh no, it's Gideon again. Like I think it's just time to move on.
Right.
What if
it's the conviction that he talks, that it seems like he's Gideon Prime, right? The way that he talks about them screwing up his plan, wiping out his clones. I mean, there's a lot of ownership and possession that this is all very personal. And you could, there's totally an argument that a clone could feel all those same ways if somehow you've also imprinted all of that on a clone. We don't know that that's actually possible or not, but there's a lot of things you'd have to do in order for that clone to feel that that is all them, that they've been the one to do this. He would have had to have been a clone for a long time to do all of those types of activities and all those things. So I think that's the part that I'm leaning on, that this is Gideon Prime. This is the Alpha, and so he's truly gone. And I agree totally with Lauren that this is closing that chapter. This is closing this part of the book. This character is gone. To bring them back, somehow he's returned. I mean, that didn't feel real good. With that line in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah. Let's not go back to that.
Let's not revisit Mandalorian, right?
Yeah.
I'm with you guys. I don't think it's a clone, first off. For all the reasons you just said. Could he have survived and he's in a mutilated state? Again, we have Darth Maul, right? Now that's different because it's, he was a dark side user.
He wasn't
imbued with the Force. Yep. But we had we had Anakin as well. So I mean, there's a precedent that's been set that bad guys can survive being burned, and so I think they've left it open intentionally. If I had my ways, I'd say he's gone too, because I do like that this does kind of close that chapter, and it leads into where I think the series is going to go at this point. So I'll just pin that, and we'll kind of come back to it a little bit. So that's kind of how that really all wraps up, and then we get into these series of kind of rapid succession scenes, right, where they're kind of just putting bows, no pun intended, on a lot of the stuff that happened in the first 3 seasons. The first one that we get to is stuff that happened in this season, which was the very beginning with, Ragnar saying, "Where's Dad?" Like, I don't know who broke the news to him that Pops didn't make it out alive, but he at least got his baptism, which I thought was cool, and in the waters themselves, like waters proper. It wasn't even like the Florida Gator sewage stuff that they were in back a couple episodes ago. So I did enjoy that he finally got it. And then we get into Grogu, and that whole sequence, which basically was, you could hear people cheering across the world that he was adopting him. And this is what something I think I've always wanted, and a lot of people have.
I didn't hear cheers, but I saw lots of tears.
Lots of tears, yeah. But yeah, so Lauren, let's start with you. What thoughts or commentary do you have around the baptism, and then especially Grogu's adoption? And we can get into the name too, because I got questions about the name. Like, how does that work? And I'm not going to overthink it, but your thoughts there.
Well, my main thought that I had with the adoption is I was like, I thought he already was adopted, but it was nice to have it like said out loud and like a nice little ceremony to go with it. So I thought it was really sweet that they actually like made it official, even though of course we all know that Grogu has been his son for quite some time now.
Hmm.
And it was good seeing that Ragnar's ceremony got to be completed too, because I know that felt kind of like what's going to happen if somebody's ceremony isn't finished. So I'm glad that he got that moment as well.
Yeah. Jonesy, how about you?
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, it's really great that I think to hear Din Djarin say it verbally, officially confirming it, I think it was the most meaningful, right? That he finally was able to vocalize how he felt about Grogu, even though it was still more in this apprentice type of fashion. Like clearly the amount of care, and Grogu, the look on his face was just like, "Oh, Dad,
Mm-hmm.
I love it. Yeah, yes, I'll be your baby." I mean, so it was just wonderful to kind of see that moment between them, transpire in that type of way too, and that it was all part of the ceremony too in the Living Waters. Now, the part we didn't get that would have been really cool though would be if the armor invited Grogu to step into the waters. That would have been like a whole nother level.
Yeah, I would agree. I liked all of that. The other thing that stood out for me was the way that the armorer said, "This is the way." Like that for me was like cementing the idea that she is a good person. Like she seems to be in favor of all this. She was almost kind of like signaling the way. I tend to overread things, but when she was talking about the parents, like, oh, I don't know, those parents, they're pretty long gone. She was
I
almost like
got that
baiting
too.
him to say, okay, fine, I'll adopt him then, right? She's almost pushing that in my head.
Yeah.
What I like that she does that affirmation whenever, because she did this with Bo-Katan too, right? And also with Din Djarin a couple of different times throughout this and Book of Boba Fett as well,
Mm-hmm.
where she feels very dismissive about something. She's wanting them to get to the right answer. She's kind of being that. It's more of a coaching type of thing rather than a mentor or something like
Yeah,
that. You want to get someone to lead themselves to the right path, to make the right comment, to make the right decision. And then you just have that moment of pride, and you could just hear it in her voice.
Yeah.
Yes, you did it. This is the way. It's great.
Yeah.
That's what
that
Emily
was very
Swallow sounds
close. That was very close to how she said it, actually.
Yes.
Thank you. And then so I guess what we got from this is, okay, so now similar to the Jedi, right? The master has their apprentice. They're sent out on all kinds of crazy adventures and stuff, and this is where all the training happens, out in the field kind of thing. It sounds very similar to the Jedi in that regard. But yeah, she tells them basically, you got to take them on these journeys, and that scene ends with not an insignificant moment, but Grogu connects with the mythosaur. That's how I read it, right? You could see it in his eyes. They closed in on him, then they went down into the depths. And they show us the mythosaur, who didn't make an appearance. We'll talk more about that a little bit later here, but I just wonder at some point is that connection going to be kind of the key, similar to Ezra in the Purrgil, or Ezra in any number. Well, Ezra was pretty sensitive, but Anakin as well, right? They both were really hypersensitive about that animal connection, animal affinity, force power. But do you think this is going to? No, go ahead.
I was just gonna chime in. We see Grogu do it with the Rancor too.
Yes. Yep. But do you think they're signaling that if and when we see the mythosaur again, that Grogu will have a hand in this in some way?
Yeah, I think so. I think that connection was being established deliberately, and I think that's why we got a little hint of it in Book of Boba Fett with him doing it with the Rancor too. So I think it's definitely going to continue on in the future seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great opportunity for, again, tie them back in. So if the mythosaur does emerge and Grogu is not there, but if they do come back because something is going on, then you have that connection there. I like that Mandalorians are supposed to be able to commune with animals, especially the mythosaur, right? But with any kind of beast, they're able to commune with them. They're able to tame them, create a bond. And so that Grogu can do that in a different way than them. it's just deeper on a much deeper level as well. So I really like that connection. I was glad that I'm glad that's all they did with the Mythosaur,
Mythosaur.
because I'm glad that they showed it. I think it was important to still show it, not forget about it, not just totally dismiss it as just an Easter egg, in the other episode or a cameo, however you'd like to position that. But it was actually part of the episode, a bit of a cliffhanger, if you will, or at least a teaser of what could be to come in the future, and also something that points you towards the future and just what is possible in the series moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, it speaks to the title too. Like, there's a lot going on here. You've got the return of the Mythosaur, the return of Bocaton, the return of IG-11. We didn't really talk about it, but there was that scene that almost feels out of place, but I think it's going to play in a little bit later when they went into the caves, those subsurface caves, and she makes that I forget his name. I don't think they've given him a name, but that one of the Hobo Mandos says, "Hey, these plants existed before all of the battles, like the recent war-torn battles." Because, when we're introduced to Mandalore in the Clone Wars, like it's like a desert, right? It's been just blown to pieces because of all the inner fighting. They don't really have a lot of, foliage and all that. And what they were saying is that this foliage is stuff that used to be here before all of that even started. And somehow it suddenly sprouted again, right? So it was the return of that. So in my head, I'm thinking at some point, and maybe not in any of the series that we got coming up, because I think there's going to be some time, but let's say you fast forward to, I don't know, the rise of Skywalker, or even beyond that. Mandalore looks very different. It looks like Mandalore of like the old Republic, where there's buildings, everything's above ground, and there's, greenery everywhere. And the Mythosaurs are once again roaming the earth, right? It feels like this is all coming back. So it is a rebirth of sorts, right? For the entire planet. On that point of the Mythosaur, or sorry, you can chime in if you want to say something. Sorry, Jonesy.
Yeah, just real quickly. I think so. Some of the dialogue, the way I understood at least, that there were pockets of all of this, but these folks had the sled pirates, not Hobo Mandos, the sled pirates, had to go and farm and kind of cultivate it. Stop it. They had to go give it the opportunity to grow. It was always there, but it was just very limited on where they could find it or where it was. But it just needed the opportunity. It needed the love. It needed the care. It needed the attention, right? And again, it's more of that symbolic nature of Mandalorians taking care of their own is how you grow, not only, farming and everything else, or, your sustenance, but also how do you grow your people? How do you restore the name of what being a Mandalorian truly means to everyone?
Yeah.
It was very symbolic in that nature.
Yeah. There was, what was the line? Actually, I had that in my notes too. It's something about, it just needs a little space to grow or something like that, right? He's speaking an analogy as for the people of Mandalore, essentially, which, we get. So going back to the other thing I was going to say about the Mythosaur is, like, you're right. Like, we were so late in seeing the Mythosaur, and with everything else going on, like, it wouldn't have been like fair for them to really introduce the Mythosaur. I mean, we were questioning, like, what is this thing going to do? Yeah. It's like, is it going to come out, rampage around, and then he tames it? I don't know, but it feels like they've shown us the Mythosaur. I have no doubt in my mind that this thing will resurface. Grogu will likely be a part of it, but they can now at least dedicate some time to explain all that stuff, because I think that there is a lot of questions around, how do you tame it, and how big is it, and what does it actually mean for Mandalore in this day and age, right? If they've given up on all the symbolism and the idols and symbolic stuff, and yet here comes this Mythosaur who's literally the sigil for all of Mandalorians. What does that mean, right? So I think they did the right thing in showing us that and saying, hey, we're going to tease this a little bit later, and then later on we'll give you, more time, or we'll give ourselves more time to really give it the proper attention and storytelling that it truly deserves. So, okay, so we're done there. We flash over now quickly over to the Great Forge. I said we were going to get this thing lit up. Here we go. They did light it up. I love the fact that she handed the torch to Bo-Katan. It allowed Bo-Katan to be the one that ignited, because you got to think she was probably thinking, man, I really want to ignite this. I hope she just lets me do it. And she's like, oh, okay, no, you want? Okay, that's fine. Fine. You go ahead and light it. But I did love that they did light it up. And again, it starts those chants. But, going back to what the armorer said, where this was kind of like, another symbol of Mandalore. I forget her exact wording, but this certainly was a holy place of sorts, given what it does in creating the armor and the weapons and all that. So anyway, it's cool to see the forge light up. Jonesy, how did you feel about them falling in line and cheering. And then the question to that is, they never explicitly say it, but was that kind of was it inferred that they're all following Bo-Katan now? Is she now the rightful leader? I don't know if we want to call her the Mandalore, but it feels like everybody is like, yeah, you got your seat back.
That was the question I left with it, and I put in the notes as well. Is Bo-Katan the ruler of Mandalore at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Or is she kind of the de facto leader? I mean, do you need a really clear representation, or do you just need a champion, right? Someone that you can rally around, someone that you look to for guidance. They don't necessarily have to be the king or the queen, right? In that very literal sense. But you do have the leader. I think Bo-Katan had earned the right to light the forge at the very least. At his most basic level, she's the one that brought the clans together. She's the one that demonstrated that this was all possible. She led the charge in many different ways. They defeated the big bad. So that she would get to light the forge seems very just an honor, a token of respect and of honor that the armor bequeathed upon her to be able to do this. So I really like that aspect. Is she the real true Mandalore though? I don't know. I guess the most basic answer is probably yes. But do they have to figure that out? Are they going to start holding elections now? Maybe, I don't know. It depends on where this might go from a culture, but they don't really answer this at all. Well, they don't answer it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there was a prophecy that was tied to this. The prophecy was that someone, at least from Bo-Katan's perspective, someone would come back and rule Mandalore again, right? Rebirth it in some way. But the Darksaber was never part of that from her, for that part of the legend. But going back to Tar Vizsla and what Fen Rao was talking about, right? The ideology that the Night Owls were following, the Mandalore wielded the Darksaber, and because the Darksaber is gone, I don't know that you could, say that she technically is the Mandalore. I think she is the de facto, leader at this point. She is the queen. She's royalty. It's her throne. I think people have, by and large, fell in line with that. I think they're okay with it now. And I like the fact that the way I kind of, in all seriousness, the way I interpreted the scene was the armor felt like Bo-Katan needed to be the one that the people see light this forge, right? There's just something symbolic, something inspirational about this, right? That she is the one that she did all those wonderful things, and she's returned Mandalore to its former glory, or is going to get there, right? So I like that she probably did that for Bo-Katan more than for herself. So I know, Lauren, you've been nodding and agreeing. Anything you want to add to Bo-Katan's leadership, where she stands as the leader of Mandalore or not?
Yeah, it's adding on to what y'all were saying. I feel like her getting to light the forge, it is the symbol of, even though you don't have the Darksaber, like, you've earned your place as our ruler. Like, and she has, like, she's really, throughout this whole season, we've seen her actually earning and showing them that she is an effective, or she could be an effective ruler. And I mean, I feel like, as to the official term of the Mandalore, that's hard to say at this point, but who else would it be if not her? That's kind of where I am, is like,
Exactly.
I can't picture anybody else coming in and being the Mandalore other than her. So I don't know if maybe, like, next season maybe we'll get a more official recognition of that, but it's got to be her at the top. I don't see it any other way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it
her
seems like
sister, neither her or her sister were the Mandalore, right? To be clear, they were just the royalty, the leaders of Mandalore. There's something different about the title of the Mandalore. So I think you're right. I think she technically is, although I don't know that they'll ever acknowledge that, because I think there's some stuff that's missing. But maybe they do. I don't know what. I've got some speculation around what that's going to look like here post this season. Issa said Bo-Katan walks both worlds. That's right. That's what the armorer said. So I think they were showing us literally what that looks like for somebody to walk both worlds, and that is everybody coming together and falling in line with their leadership. Steph says it feels like she's the leader. She was handed the torch. So, yeah, going back to the symbolism there as well. Okay, we get to the next quick scene, which is what is this? It's like a truck stop for pilots in the New Republic. I called it Buc-ee's. I don't know. That's a Texas thing. I don't know if anybody's got a better analogy of whatever this place is. Jonesy, Lauren?
I think Bucky's pretty much covers it. No, it was a little bit nicer. They had a bar in there. I don't think they have a bar in a Bucky's. So
yeah, but their bathrooms probably not be as clean as Bucky's. So.
Probably
true.
Yeah.
Did y'all find that Carson Teva's character was just odd in this episode? Like, thanks for taking care of everything for us. He felt very dismissive about everything.
I think the dialogue was a little stiff. I think that's what it was.
It was very awkward. Yeah, I couldn't get behind it. It was just very, you did all the work for us. Cool. I was right. Something funny was going on. Glad you figured it out.
I kind of interpret it as like he was stressing about this, and I mean, Din just, gave him nothing to do now. Like I feel like he was thankful for what had happened, and at the same time acknowledging that, wow, you made my life a lot easier. I'm just going to collect a paycheck here for the next few weeks because you just took care of half the stuff I had on my work list. It
was like that South Park episode. They took our jobs.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, he's got no work. He's just going to hang out at the bar and throw shots back with Favreau and Filoni there dressed as pilots.
Was Favreau in the shot? I saw Filoni.
No, it was just Filoni. And
okay.
Who else was in there? There was someone else I thought I saw as well, but definitely Filoni was in there wearing his hat. So the Grogu walking in, by the way. So getting back to the puppeteering. This was like the best. Go ahead and start slamming your no button. But I loved it because you could almost see like somebody was just holding the strings and making his feet go up and down as he was coming into the bar. Oh, it was so perfect.
I love the puppet. Like the look of the puppet and the fact that you can tell it's a puppet. I love that. So I'm right there with you.
And I want to go back to the comments. A long time ago, Chef Chris, who's with us tonight, chimed in. Where was it here? He said, my favorite part, here, pulled it up. My favorite part of this whole thing was Din Grogu eating space pork rinds at the bar. Like he jumps up on the bar and just starts mowing down on the pork rinds and peanuts.
In on him.
And they zoomed in on him, right? They like wanted to highlight the fact that he was always hungry, which is definitely in character for him. But so this is an interesting piece here, right? This whole the dialogue itself, like aside from the awkwardness and where this was going, the minute he started talking about, I've got a proposition for you. He talked about being an independent contractor for the New Republic. He's technically not part of the New Republic, and I can understand that. But when he's saying, you can't keep the Outer Rim safe, and we have all these Imperial remnants that are out there. Like for me, that felt like that was like the Rangers of the New Republic. Like if I had to like think what that storyline was going to be, you could have these characters that are going around hunting down the rest of that Shadow Council, which I think is probably where this is going to go. Like every season there's, they introduce us to two of those people, right? And eventually they get all kind of either killed or captured by Din and Grogu, right? And we know that Brendel Hux lives on, and we know that what's his face lives on as well. So I don't think, yeah, right. So they never get captured, right? But everybody else, like this feels like this was probably going to be what that new Rangers of the New Republic was going to be. It feels like now it's just been pared down to Grogu and Din Djarin doing this, which I'm okay, because then that turns into the more of the, we go week to week and there's a new bad and, there's a bigger storyline. I think all this would then play up into, at some point, he's going to uncover these breadcrumb trails that lead to Thrawn's return, even though he may not know who Thrawn is. It's a way to kind of bring him into other shows as well. And I'm getting into what's going to happen going forward, but I know that's a lot to interpret from like 3 lines of dialogue on this, but I don't know where the series goes at this point. And so that seems to me, for me, like the likeliest choice. But what did you think, Jonesy?
I mean, I'm with you. I think this was all pointing towards the Rangers of the New Republic. Is what I saw the entire time. And even when we see IG-11 come back, he's kind of got the stripes on his chest too, right? As a marshal for Navarro. Mm-hmm. But same premise that Cara Dune was filling, right? And what Grief Karga wanted Din Djarin to be able to fill too. So it just seems to fit really, really well that you'd have someone out there policing the Outer Rim, jumping in whenever things get a little too hot to handle, and you don't have the resources to do it. And we know that the New Republic not really interested in the Outer Rim all that much. They've really never, the Republic in general has never really been super interested in the Outer Rim, at least consistently or for any extended period of time. They've just never been able to get that far out to be able to help take care of it. So it's a great business proposition because, and Din Djarin calls him out as much on it. He's like, you've already thought about this. You don't need to think about it anymore.
Right.
You have no other options. You're out here kind of doing this off and on as you can, but even you can't be out here all the time. You've got to go into the mid room. You got to go in the core worlds. You guys are just stretched too thin. So, what do you got to lose? Just find a way to pay me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the other, he says he needs a small advance, and then of course he pulls like a rocket raccoon and says, "I want that guy's head," basically the thing up there.
That's another
That head
suspension
right
of disbelief.
What's that?
Another suspension of disbelief, because you just couldn't. Like, how would he get IG-11 back? But whatever. We'll let that one go. The Enzellans are amazing creatures.
They are amazing
droid smiths.
creatures. Well, they were just as surprised too. So who really put them together? In my head, it's the
Enzellans did it. Yeah.
Oh,
I think
really?
that was totally clear because they were there at the ceremony, the three of them. So I think they totally did it.
Okay.
They seemed proud.
Yeah, probably. Okay, so let's talk quickly then. So the return of IG-11. He gets his deed to the cabin. They're gonna lay low. He tells him in between adventures. I mean, Lauren, this is like all music to your ears. Like, this was already painting and sweeping this happy ending to the series. Essentially, what it felt like here. But yeah, what did you? And we can. I don't know if there's much to talk about IG-11. I think that's great that he eventually is the marshal. Had never even considered that, and I think it makes complete and total sense given his history with that planet all the way back to season 1 or that town. So all that makes total sense. I actually am pretty happy for that. My only thing was, and maybe we can start with this question, Lauren, was do you think he shows up ever again? Because Navarro feels like it's kind of its own thing. This is another one that it just feels like it's ended and they're good. They've got a marshal now. The pirates are gone. It's blooming. It's prosperous. Maybe there's still Mandalorians hanging out there in that piece of land that no one's in. They just abandoned it now or whatever. But yeah, do you think we'll ever get any more of IG-11?
I think we probably will see some brief scenes of Din on Navarro, although I agree with you that I don't think that Navarro is going to be like central to the plot going forward. And I could see us getting a little bit of IG-11 in those moments, but I don't believe that he's going to be central. But I do love the idea of Din and Grogu settling down on Navarro and having a peaceful life in between adventures. I mean, that's like, I couldn't have the only thing that would make it better is if Bo-Katan was there with them, but I'm willing to hold out and wait for that because I'm happy that they ended up having a little peaceful place to live in for a while.
Right. Definitely not Omara.
Yeah, you said Bocaton, but we know you meant Omara, so it's fine.
No, definitely Bo-Katan.
I'm with Lauren on this one.
I'm not gonna let you have that one.
How is that gonna work though? She's like the queen of a planet. She can't settle down. That's never going to work.
Yeah, it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make, that if the cost of Din and Grogu getting to live in that adorable little cabin on Navarro means that Bo-Katan and Din can't be together right now, then I'm okay with that. And maybe once Bo-Katan down the line, whoever her successor is, maybe she will then go to the cabin. Like, I think there's still time, is what I'm saying.
You have to let love grow sometimes. A little fondness of space.
They've both got a lot on their plate right now. She's got to rule a planet. She's got to possibly become the Mandalore. And Din is raising a baby. So there's time in the future, but right now they're just very busy.
Well, that didn't work for Han and Leia, but who am I to judge? So.
They're different. They've
okay. All right.
They would be different. They'll handle it better.
These two embrace who they are rather than try to resist it.
Yes. That's
actually a good point. Hey, so Issa brought up something too that I didn't consider. I think they rebuilt IG-11 but didn't return his memories, just programmed and named him as such. I hadn't thought about that. Like, it felt like that was they couldn't do that, right? That would have been really hazardous for them to give him back his old memories. And so they never really, like, there was a part that he needed, right? And all that. And I don't remember it being the head, but maybe it was. I don't know. This is they just kind of, yeah, maybe that's why he needed the head and it just happened to be in there. It's fine either way, but it just made me think about that. Okay, so we were talking about Omara and Din raising a child together. Oh, that's right. I was talking about Amara. Yeah, no. So the music was great here. Honestly, you know, I have a feeling. I'd like to think that Quill is up in space, looking down on him and seeing that he has his own place now, very similar to him. Right? It's almost like what Quill was talking about. Right? This is what he wanted, his own land, being able to live independently. And here's Mando, outside of not having blurgs, which is fine. Very similar in that nature. So I enjoyed that aspect of it, whether it was on the nose or not. The music here was great too. Like, it was very different than what we had gotten in the past. And of course we end with that spotlight and Grogu floating frogs. And so, I mean, this series, like this episode ends almost like a series. So I'll start with you, Lauren, on this question, but like, if they said this was Mandalorian was like 3 seasons long, and this is how it ended, would you be okay with this as the series finale ending?
I would be sad that it's ending, but I do think that the way that this ended, I would be at peace with it. I feel like that final shot of Din and Grogu out front of the cabin, I could end on that note and I would be okay with it. But I mean, I would be sad if this was the end and we didn't get any warning going into this season.
Well, yeah, no, for sure.
But like that
Surprise.
part aside, yeah, that part aside, if they ended the whole series on this kind of a note, I think that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I agree.
What about you, Jonesy?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you talk about wrapping up the story arc, and you mentioned it at the beginning of the show, Albert. They wrapped up all the things we kind of knew we needed to know, that we needed to have. We have closure. And so it feels like we have wrapped up, like these 3 seasons really wrapped up what we set out to do. You know, what we learned about the characters, all the ones we picked up along their way for the most part. We resolved Moff Gideon. You know, everything just feels like it really did finish up. So if this is the end of the series, I think it works. I mean, I'm with Lauren. I think that it's a little sad to see it go because it's a good series. We like the characters. But I think what it also does is, if you want to take a break from the series and pick it up at a later date and do a big time jump, you have a very clean cut now to be able to do that. You can put these guys in other pieces of content. You can flash forward. So if you do come back and do a Mandalorian season 4 or something that's a continuation of the story in another show, then you can have a nice big time jump. Grogu can be older. Everything can be a little bit different. You have a lot of options at your disposal now. You don't have to pick up from this moment, and you really have like a blank slate in front of you now for the most part. And you just pick up these other characters and you interact with them as needed and kind of whatever makes sense for you now.
Susan.
Yes.
Susan says it would have been better if they went back to Sorgan and settled down with Omera. Thank you so much. That's all I'm saying.
No, see, that would be difficult because he loves Bocaton. So,
well, he loved Omera first. That's his first love.
But
First
Grogu
crush.
loves Bocaton more.
Sometimes it doesn't work out with your first love for a reason.
But he never had a chance. All I'm saying is give love a chance. That's all.
I could respond, but I'm not going to because we would be here all night. So
Grogu likes Bocaton more. He sat in her lap.
But he never got to know Omera. He would have sat in Omera's lap. I mean, come on. They had a good relationship with her child as well. So he had as a sibling there.
True.
He doesn't have that now.
He had a good relationship with Lizzo too. So, standards are mixed.
He loves everybody.
And everybody loves him.
He likes the attention.
Okay, so let's get to the final questions here on this stuff. So before it really gets off the rails, but so the Darksaber, I think we're all in agreement. It had to go. I think we're fine with it going. In my head, at some point, it does get repaired, but then I started going down the path of like, who would repair this thing, right? I don't know. Luke Skywalker would be the only person I could think of right now, but I don't know where it would be needed. It's just there's something about that particular weapon, especially in this time frame and the scarcity of these things. Like it easily could be repaired because it's just I don't think if the kyber crystal in there is destroyed, then I'm okay, fine. Then that seems almost impossible. Although we've repaired kybers before, but we don't know what the crystal is in there, right? It could have just been the helmet, which I thought was Beskar, by the way. He crushed that like a tin can, so whatever.
This feels like Lord of the Rings, Lauren. Like, so do they need to rebuild the sword for some specific purpose? That is epic in nature, right? We have this incredibly bad situation that we need to resurrect it in order to not only be symbolic of it, but also it has some sort of mystical element to it in some kind of way. It almost feels like that. I can't remember the name of the sword for it that Aragorn ends up using, but this is right up your alley.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with the power, see, I feel like the Darksaber, it feels more like the One Ring to me. It's just it has too much power. Nothing good comes of it. So I think it probably should stay broken because it I feel like if it comes back, we're almost going backwards in progress, where everybody has seemed to kind of have gotten past the Darksaber thing, where if it comes back, we don't want people relying on it again instead of moving forward. So
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't want it to come back either. I think it served its purpose. We've learned a big lesson. Let's learn the lesson and move on. We don't need to resurrect it.
yeah.
Until Grogu is taller and needs to be the Mandalore.
Because he
that's what
doesn't have Yoda's lightsaber, like we told you all along.
But if he had, he didn't pull it out. Really upset about that. But if he had a choice between the Darksaber and that little pesky weapon that Grogu or Yoda had, I mean, come on, Darksaber, right?
Dual wielding.
There you go. Why roll that out? Just have them dual wield. I love that idea. Okay. Next question. Will we see the Mythosaur? I think we've beat that Bantha to death already. So we'll move on. Who were the spies? Dang it. Do we even care at this point? Like, so in my,
No,
so
we
here,
don't.
in my head, the spy's still there. In my head, it's still there.
I don't.
Jonesy's rolling his eyes. Lauren's shaking her head. Now I got Grogu saying no. Go ahead.
This whole thing of everybody wanting to figure out who betrayed and all that, I just never felt like it was any of them. Like, my heart was just never really in that debate. So if there's no spies, then that sounds good to me.
Yeah, this is dead, Jim. Move on.
Okay, we'll move on. All right, so here's a good question. What do we ever go back to Mandalore at this point? And if so, like in what capacity? Like for me, and I said this in the last show, if we ever get to a Thrawn and we need muscle, right, in this battle, because we're not going to get it from the New Republic, there are no Jedi, so you got to bring in heavy hitters somewhere of like a prospering Mandalore, repopulated Mandalore with new tech and, all that stuff operating as they should as one unit. That's pretty powerful, right? That's a pretty big force to be reckoned with. And I can see their role in that. But, aside from that, they've got an entire planet that has been completely turned to glass. The parts that aren't glass are desert and sand. They've got a lot of growth that needs to happen, a lot of rebuilding that needs to happen. I mean, you're talking and they don't have a lot of people either, right? They've got, let's just say, let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say there were 500 Mandalorians that survived that were on that battle. Now, granted, they're probably going to go out and start gathering other ones that have been splintered and ran off, so those numbers will go up. But how are you going to rebuild all of that in that short period of time to be, one, be called upon, and then two, what does that look like? If we had to go back there, what is that? Is that a series? Is it just a check-in with Bocaton, or they just need her specifically at some point? But I'd like to see Mandalore grow. I'd like to see where it goes, but I don't know how we get there, at least in the next 5 to 10 years.
I could see it being a little check-in. This show seems to like doing little check-ins with people. So I can see, a check-in where we see some progress being made, and then maybe every once in a while see some more progress.
I agree. Yeah, I think it's that. Plus, like you had said, Albert, when you need muscle, you need firepower, you need people you can trust, right? This happened in the first season, right, where we have to go back and find the people that we can rely on, that don't necessarily owe us anything, but we have a bond, we have a connection. We want to go see mom, and so it's important that they'll bring that back in order to bring the family back together, but also for a specific purpose. And again, just because Din Djarin and Grogu are going about doing their journey and adventure and experiencing life and learning what it means to be an apprentice, doesn't mean they don't have a reason to go back to Mandalore at all. To check in, to get new armor, get new accoutrement, all that kind of stuff, right? So there's reasons to go back, but the main reasons would be that we need help, for something, and so we can continue to do that. I don't know that staying on Mandalore and exploring farming is super interesting for a series, but maybe. I mean, there's a lot of people who like Animal Crossing and things like that too. So
love Animal Crossing.
Shots fired. So wow, man, that just when you think he's not going to do it, he just cuts you out from the legs.
That's That's okay. No offense taken. Animal Crossing is a wonderful game.
It is a very wonderful game. It sold millions and millions of copies.
Yeah, no shade. I mean, they banked.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I like all those ideas actually. I guess where I was struggling with it was, well, I was thinking too, like, could they make this into a series, and not on the farming? I get it. I'm not going to show how they grow plants, but I think it would be, I don't know, maybe for me, I think it would be intriguing if they gave the song of Bocaton, right? A series of contending with all of the alien species on there, growing the planet. I don't know. I just how do you keep them engaged and relevant so that, because in my head, and it's going to lead into the final question here, which is, what did this ending mean? And and that kind of is a segue also into how do we feel about season 4? But in my head, the way this season kind of ended was a clear indicator that we are getting this Thrawn movie, in 2 years from now, or whatever it is, 2025, 2026, whatever it's being lined up for. And that at some point, that's going to give these guys time to rebuild. It's a reset of this. And so now you have a lot of flexibility with Din and Grogu to kind of pop in and out of series. And I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't think so, but I think the possibility is real. They could pop into Skeleton Crew. They could pop into Ahsoka. They could pop into Bo-Katan stuff. There are probably other series out there. They could be reliving or doing some of the stuff that was planned for Rangers of the New Republic. And I know a lot of people are scratching their head going like, why did this series end the way it did? And how come it feels like this is over? Well, because this is just the first chapter, right? You can almost look at it as kind of like the prequel or the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy, however you want it. These 3 seasons were a story. We're done. We're tying that up. And now we've got the next 3 seasons, which are going to be focused on building up into, this movie. And man, you've got so many possibilities. It's like I said at the very beginning, it feels like this is just a reset of this show in particular, and it can go anywhere. It's just it's pretty wide open. So I think that's kind of a fresh new take on, I think, what we're used to seeing with the television series. And I think that's why people are a little like scratching their heads about why.
Yeah, we're used to the sequels being very prescriptive because we've kind of known everything that goes around, at least within the original trilogy and then the prequel trilogy. And then we had an idea where the sequel trilogy would land, at least with some characters. So now it's really, it's unknown for us, right? And I think that's okay. And I think that was exactly my point you were making, was it's okay to close this part of the chapter, this trilogy, if you want to call it that. That's perfectly fine. I think it's actually perfect. I mean, it's okay to have closure and feel like this is the end. If you find that there's more story to tell, then we revisit, we start bringing that story. If no, we really feel like we've kind of told the story we want to tell and we want to close it. Cool. We feel like we have found really good, solid closure on this, the show, and we feel comfortable leaving it as where it's at, and we'll move on to something else. And if we borrow these characters, cool. They're available. We can use all of this. None of it is going to be thrown away.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay. Well, I guess before we get out of here, just quickly, final question. Lauren, I'll start with you. Season 3. How did you feel about it? And I don't want to preface this at all, but how did you feel about season 3 and overall?
Season 3 had some awesome moments that were really exciting for me. Also, some moments that felt a little bit, where are we going with this? What's happening? But overall, I really enjoyed it. So the good definitely outweighed the what's going on here moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think overall it was enjoyable. I'm with Lauren. I think it was a little inconsistent at times. We weren't really sure what we were doing. We did have movement usually through most episodes, and I think there were something that we could grab onto most weeks. And could they have tried? Well, I think the one good thing about this season, though, is that we did set out when we did the teaser that we're going back to Mandalore. We're going to liberate Mandalore. We're going to repopulate wherever that was. That is where we ended up. And that's what we delivered on. And that's what's always really important, is what you promised to the audience when you set this up. And I forgot what you called it when we were talking before the show. What is it? Tone setting or something like that?
Oh, a tone promise.
Tone promise. Yeah. It's almost like the story promise too. Did you actually deliver on the story that you promised people? And yeah, I think we did. And I think could we have done it differently? Of course we could have. But did it work the way that we did it as well? Yes, it did work. And that's why the conclusion here feels satisfying. is because we did deliver on all. We did close up all the things we wanted. It's nice and buttoned up, but overall, I wish there was a little bit more consistency with the, with where they were going and the idea that we had an idea as an audience. It didn't feel like we were lost at any kind of point about what the heck could they do next week? We had a couple of those moments, but within, 8 chapters here, usually they're pretty tight within this, even if they get off on a bit of a tangent, but overall enjoyable. May not be my top Mandalorian season. I'd have to kind of go back and revisit the other ones to see how I felt about that, but we have a lot of time to go back and revisit all 3 seasons and kind of see how they lay out, ranking wise.
Yeah. So for me, I think it's definitely not see, you were never going to top season 2 finale, right? Luke's return was never going to get outdone. So I totally get that. I think they did enough in this final episode, the final episode, to give us a very action-packed, very Star Wars-y kind of episode. The season itself wasn't the best. I mean, I think season 2 is the clear winner here, then season 1, then season 3. That said, I enjoyed season 3, and I think really, and I don't know, again, this is pure speculation on my part, but it felt almost, knowing what I know now, and this is coming off a Celebration, I do wonder if these first 3 seasons were the 5 seasons that he had planned. And because they were going to do a movie, and because they had greenlit the future of, this Mandoverse kind of thing, that maybe they did just kind of shrink this down, right? And condense it from 5 to 3 so they could get through that. And then on top of that, the whole Rangers of the New Republic piece that fell into there, because that was the part for me for season 3 that really kind of threw a wrench in all this, is that we were getting this world building, like stories that felt like they were important, but we don't even now still understand why they're important. And I think it's playing into future episode or future series. It could play into the movies. So I think it was trying to be this bridge of, where they were when they first set out on this and that first 3 to 5 year plan, and then where we're going now in the next 3 to 5 year plan. I think they were trying to be the best, kind of pull it all together and kind of be that transition series or transition show. And I think that's why it feels a little, I wouldn't say disjointed, but it's just not clear at times. That said, I enjoyed the season. I think it was great. It had some really great moments. And I think the last 2 episodes especially did a really good deal for them. I mean, they really stood out. They shined. They felt like Star Wars. It was almost, I wouldn't call it redemption, but it certainly made up for some of the other stuff that I was scratching my head going, okay, I could take it or leave it kind of thing. So, okay. Well, that's all we got for the breakdown. We've got, again, Sunday we'll do a spotlight show, so we'll be probably talking more about Mandalore. We'll probably maybe get into some of this other stuff as well. We'll get that here on the books in just a little bit. But Jonesy, did you have shout-outs?
Yeah, shout out. So if you're listening to the show, thank you for downloading the podcast. If you would like to listen to us on Sundays or Thursdays at 9 p.m. Central, cantinacast.com/YouTube is where you can find us. You can join these amazing people in the chat: Jonathan, Sky, Stephanie, Qui-Gon J, Kathy, Risk, Alex, Chef Chris, Juan Martinez, Katya, Isa, Travis Mitchell, Hard Countered, Frank, and Susan. If I missed anyone, my apologies, not intentional. Thank you for coming out to the stream. Thank you for all the chat. Thank you for all the interactions. Albert, thanks for keeping up with it and throwing it up on the screen as well. We hope people will come out and join us. We see the people in the background as well. Hopefully next time you'll come out and pay us a visit and say hello.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Lauren, any final words before we get out of here?
I'm ready for season 4.
Okay, season 4. Jonesy, any final words from you?
No.
And from me?
No.
So with that, we'll end the show there, and we'll see you guys in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.